Jimin stood in the massive hall and felt smaller than she had ever felt in her life. The ceiling stretched so high above her that she couldn't see where it ended. Around her, creatures from across the galaxy filled the space with their enormous bodies, their strange colors, and their loud voices. She was human. She was alone, and everyone was staring at her. The Galactic Defense Academy didn't look like the pictures she had seen back on Earth. In the pictures, everything seemed clean and bright and welcoming. But standing here now with 200 recruits from 47 different species, Jimin realized the truth. This place wasn't made for humans. Nothing here was made for humans. A creature that looked like a walking crystal mountain bumped past her. It didn't apologize. It probably didn't even notice her. The creature stood at least 3 meters tall, and its body reflected the light in 1,000 different colors. Jimin had studied the species files on the trip here. That was a Korthan. Their bodies were made of living silicon, and they were nearly impossible to hurt. The Korthan's name was Hanul, and he was already laughing with a group of other large recruits. "Make way for the human," someone said. The voice was high and musical, but the words were cruel. Jimin turned and saw a being made entirely of glowing blue energy. Atasari. The creature's name was Bora, according to the tag that floated near its form. Bora didn't have a real body, just energy held together by something Jimin didn't understand. "I hear humans break if you push them too hard." Other recruits laughed. Jimin felt her face grow hot, but she kept her eyes forward. She had practiced this. She had known this would happen. Humans were new to the Galactic Alliance. They were weak compared to almost every other species. Everyone knew it. Everyone said it. "Attention." The voice boomed through the hall and every recruit fell silent immediately. Jimin looked up at the stage at the front of the room. An insect-like creature stood there, easily 2.5 meters tall. Its body was covered in black and green armor that looked like it had been through 1,000 battles. 4 arms crossed over its chest. 2 large eyes, dark as space itself, scanned the room. This was Instructor Velthar, a Vrethian warrior with more combat experience than most species had recorded history. "You are now recruits of the Galactic Defense Academy," Velthar said. His voice didn't need a microphone. It filled every corner of the massive room. "You come from different worlds, different species, different strengths. But here you are all the same. You're all weak." Jimin felt a small amount of relief at those words. At least she wasn't the only one being called weak. "Some of you will fail in the first week," Velthar continued. "Some of you will fail in the first day. And some of you—" His large eyes fixed on Jimin. She felt like she was being studied by a predator. "Some of you should never have been accepted at all." The relief vanished. Jimin's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had applied to this academy 7 times. 7 times they had rejected her. On the 8th attempt, they finally said yes. She didn't know why they changed their minds, but she wasn't going to waste the chance. "In 1 week you will face your first major test," Velthar announced. "The gravity gauntlet. A 500-meter corridor where the gravity increases with every step. The current record is 42 seconds, set by a Korthan recruit 3 years ago. The average completion time is 2 to 3 minutes. 15% of recruits cannot complete it at all." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Those who fail will be reviewed for dismissal. Begin your training." The hall erupted into noise as recruits started moving toward the exit doors. Jimin was pushed and jostled by creatures much larger and stronger than her. She tried to keep her balance, but someone's arm knocked her sideways. She stumbled and would have fallen if a hand hadn't caught her elbow. "Careful," a calm voice said. Jimin looked up into the face of something that looked almost like a dolphin, but with arms and legs and skin that shimmered like water. A Hulmar. His name tag read Minho. "The crowd can be dangerous when everyone forgets to look down." "Thank you," Jimin said. She pulled her arm free gently, not wanting to seem rude. Minho smiled, or at least made an expression that seemed like a smile. "You're the human, right, Jimin?" "Yes, I'm Minho. I wanted to introduce myself because—" He hesitated. "Because my people know what it's like to be considered weak. The Vrethians almost destroyed my species 1,000 years ago. They said we were too soft to survive. But we're still here." Jimin didn't know what to say to that. Before she could think of a response, another recruit shoved past them. It was Hanul, the massive Korthan. He looked down at both of them with something like amusement. "A Hulmar and a human," Hanul said. "The 2 weakest species in the academy together at last. How sweet." He laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. Try not to die in training, human. I want to see you fail the gravity gauntlet in person. Hanul walked away, still laughing. Several other recruits followed him, joining in the laughter. Jimin watched them go, her jaw tight. Ignore him, Minho said quietly. He's strong, but he's not as smart as he thinks. How much gravity can humans handle? Another voice asked. Jimin turned and saw a small group of recruits had gathered nearby. They weren't laughing. They looked curious. One of them, a creature covered in purple fur with 6 legs, tilted its head. We heard humans are from a low-gravity world. Earth has standard gravity, Jimin said. 1G, 1G. The purple creature's eyes widened. That's the baseline. Most training environments use 1G as the minimum. How do you build any strength at all? Jimin didn't have a good answer for that. Earth was a 1G world. That was just the truth. Compared to many other species, humans had evolved in easy conditions. They weren't as strong, weren't as fast, and weren't as durable. The files she had read made that very clear. Come on, Minho said, gesturing toward the door. We should get to the training rooms before all the good equipment is taken. Jimin followed him, very aware that other recruits were still watching her. Whispering about her, judging her. She kept her head up and her back straight, even though everything in her wanted to hide. The training rooms were even more intimidating than the hall. Equipment designed for species of every size and shape filled the enormous space. Jimin walked past a rack of weights that she couldn't even lift. She saw a running track where recruits were already sprinting at speeds that seemed impossible. In one corner, a group practiced combat, moves that would have killed a human in seconds. She found a quiet corner and started the basic exercises she knew. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, simple, human exercises that probably looked pathetic compared to what everyone else was doing. But she did them anyway, counting each one in her head. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Humans don't win by being stronger. We win by being too stubborn to quit. Jimin finished her 100th push-up and started again. Around her, aliens lifted impossible weights and performed incredible feats. But she kept going, counting each movement, ignoring the stares. She had 1 week until the gravity gauntlet. 1 week to prove she belonged here. 1 week to show them all that being human didn't mean being helpless. 1 week to do the impossible. The first combat simulation lasted exactly 4 seconds. Jimin stepped into the ring, faced Hanul across the padded floor, and then everything went white. When her vision cleared, she was lying on her back outside the ring. Her head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. Medical drones were already scanning her for injuries. Unconscious on impact, Instructor Velthar announced to the watching recruits. His voice carried no emotion, just fact. The Korthan's basic strike exceeded the human's tolerance. Jimin is removed from combat simulations until further evaluation. Jimin sat up slowly. The world spun. She could see Hanul in the ring, not even breathing hard. He had barely moved. 1 backhand strike, and she was done. Around the training room, other recruits whispered. Some looked concerned. Most looked satisfied. This was what they expected. This was what a human could do. Can you stand? Minho appeared beside her, offering a webbed hand. Jimin took it and pulled herself up. Everything hurt, but she could walk. I'm fine, she said. The words came out steady even though her legs shook. You're not fine, Minho said quietly. You have a concussion. The medical drones are recommending rest. I don't have time to rest. Jimin pushed past him, heading toward the exit. She needed to get away from all the staring eyes. She needed to think. The next 3 days were worse. The endurance run covered 50 kilometers through the station's training corridors. Xiamen ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like stone. She finished last, more than an hour behind the second-to-last recruit. When she crossed the finish line, she collapsed immediately. The medical team had to carry her to the recovery room. In the sensory tracking exercises, recruits had to identify targets using their natural senses. Species with heat vision, echolocation, or electromagnetic sensing found the targets easily. Jimin, with her basic human eyes and ears, could barely find half of them. Her score put her in the bottom 2% of all recruits. The instructor didn't even comment. He just marked her score and moved on. Zero-gravity maneuvering was a nightmare. While other species adapted quickly to weightlessness, Jimin's inner ear revolted. She spent most of the session vomiting into a bag while trying to complete simple navigation tasks. Bora, the Thessary energy being, floated past her with perfect grace and made a comment about gravity-dependent species that made everyone laugh. By day 4, Jimin stopped going to the cafeteria. She couldn't stand the looks anymore. The pity from some recruits. The contempt from others. The quiet conversations that stopped when she walked past. She ate nutrition bars in her room and studied the Academy's database, searching for anything that might help her. That's when she found it. A file about Earth buried deep in the xenobiology section. She almost scrolled past it, but something made her stop. The classification tag at the top of the file. Restricted information, Class 12 Death World. Jimin read the entire file 3 times. Then she sat back and stared at the ceiling of her small room. Her hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from possibility. On day 5, Minho found her in the empty training room at 3 in the morning. She was running on a treadmill with the gravity set to twice normal. Sweat poured down her face. Her breathing was harsh and ragged. But she kept running. "What are you doing?" Minho asked, swimming through the air to land beside the treadmill. His species could move through any fluid, including air, with equal ease. "Training," Jimin gasped out. She didn't stop running. "You're going to hurt yourself. The gravity gauntlet test is in 2 days. You should be resting." "Can't rest. Need to adapt." Each word came between breaths. "How long?" "Until your people adapted to fighting Vrithians." Minho was quiet for a moment. "Generations. It took generations of evolution and cultural change. Why, I don't have generations. Have 2 days." Jimin increased the speed and the gravity. The treadmill now simulated 2.5 times Earth's normal gravity. Her legs screamed in protest, but she kept running. "Your people survived because they changed, adapted. I need to adapt faster." "That's not how biology works," Minho said, but he didn't sound entirely sure. Jimin didn't answer. She just ran, counting each step, feeling the weight pressing down on her. In her mind, she saw the restricted file. The words repeated over and over. Earth, Class 12 Death World. Extreme evolutionary pressure. Species adaptability rated exceptional. Survival traits include enhanced endurance, rapid healing, and unusual stress tolerance. She had read about the other Class 12 worlds. There were only 6 known in the entire galaxy. Most of them were empty now. The species that evolved there had either destroyed themselves or left their planets behind. But humans were still there, still surviving, still adapting. On day 6, the Academy posted the testing order for the Gravity Gauntlet. 200 recruits would attempt the course over 2 days. Jimin drew number 187. She would go near the end after almost everyone else had finished. That night, she lay in her bed and thought about her grandmother. The old woman had survived the orbital wars, lived through the famine years, and helped rebuild Seoul from nothing. Jimin remembered sitting with her as a child, listening to stories about the old days. Why did humans survive when other species would have given up? Young Jimin had asked. Her grandmother had smiled, her face weathered by time and hardship. Because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Every other species in the galaxy is stronger than us, faster than us, better than us in almost every way. But they all have limits. They all know when to quit. Humans? She had laughed. Humans look at the impossible and see it as training. The testing began on day 7. Jimin joined the other recruits in the observation deck overlooking the gravity gauntlet. The corridor stretched out below them, 500 meters of gleaming metal. At the start, gravity would be normal. With each step forward, it would increase. By the halfway point, most species would be struggling. By the end, the gravity would be crushing. The first recruit was a Vrethian-like instructor, Velthar. The insect warrior entered the corridor and the timer started. Jimin watched the numbers climb as the recruit moved forward, fighting against the increasing weight. At 2 minutes and 12 seconds, the Vrethian crossed the finish line. A respectable time. The crowd applauded politely. More recruits followed. A species that looked like floating jellyfish completed it in 1 minute and 43 seconds. A reptilian creature covered in scales took 3 minutes and 8 seconds but made it across. Some recruits pushed themselves too hard and had to be pulled out by medical teams when they collapsed. Then Hanul entered the corridor. The massive Korthan cracked his crystalline knuckles and strode forward. Gravity that would crush most beings barely seemed to slow him down. He finished in 1 minute and 7 seconds, the fastest time so far. When he emerged, he raised his arms in victory. The crowd roared approval. Jimin watched it all. She studied how each species moved, how they adapted to the increasing pressure. She saw that most of them tried to maintain their normal pace fighting against the gravity. Only a few changed their approach, accepting the weight and working with it instead of against it. Bora, the Thessari, attempted the course and immediately started cheating. The energy being simply phased through sections where the gravity was strongest, appearing further down the corridor. Bora finished in 58 seconds, but instructor Velthar disqualified the attempt immediately. Physical traversal only, he announced. Bora must attempt again tomorrow. By the time recruit number 100 was called, almost half the observation deck had emptied. Many recruits had already completed their runs and left to celebrate or rest. Jimin remained, watching every attempt, learning everything she could. 23 recruits failed to complete the course. They either collapsed partway through or had to quit before their bodies gave out entirely. Each failure was marked on the board, each name added to the list of those who would face review. Finally, as the evening grew late, they called number 187. Jimin stood and walked toward the entrance. Only about 40 recruits remained in the observation deck. Hunnel was one of them. He had stayed specifically to watch her fail. She could see it in the way he leaned forward, his crystalline face reflecting anticipation. Minho was there too, looking worried. "Just do your best," he called out. "Don't push too hard," Jimin nodded but didn't speak. She stepped up to the entrance of the gravity gauntlet. Instructor Velthar stood nearby, holding a data pad with her information. He looked at her the way someone might look at a bug about to be crushed. "The human recruit," he said. "Are you ready to begin?" Jimin looked down the long corridor. 500 meters, 50 times Earth's gravity at the far end. Every recruit before her had started at normal gravity and let it increase gradually. Every recruit had tried to fight through it with strength and determination, but Jimin wasn't every recruit. And she had learned something that no one else here knew, something the restricted file had told her, something her grandmother had taught her. Humans weren't built to be strong. They were built to adapt, to endure, to survive what should have killed them. "I'm ready," Jimin said. "But first I have a question." Instructor Velthar tilted his insect head to one side. His dark eyes studied Jimin with something that might have been curiosity or might have been irritation. In the observation deck above, the remaining recruits leaned forward to hear what the human wanted to ask. "What's the actual gravity limit of the corridor?" Jimin asked. Her voice was steady, but inside her heart hammered against her ribs. Velthar's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement. "The corridor can simulate up to 75 G. However, that level would kill most species instantly. The test is capped at 50 G for safety reasons." "Why do you ask? Can I choose what gravity level to start at?" Now Velthar definitely looked amused. "The protocol is to begin at 1 G and allow the gravity to increase naturally as you progress. This conserves energy and allows for strategic pacing. However, technically you may start at any level you choose. No recruit has ever requested anything different." He paused. "Do you wish to start at a higher initial gravity? 2 G, perhaps?" 50 G, Jimin said. "I want to start at the maximum level immediately." The observation deck erupted in noise. Recruits who had been quietly watching suddenly stood up. Hanel's laugh boomed out over the others. Even Minho looked shocked, his dolphin-like face showing clear concern. Velthar raised one clawed hand and silence fell. He looked down at Jimin, and for the first time there was something other than contempt in his expression. "You do understand what you're asking? 50 G means your body will experience 50 times its normal weight. For a human, that means crushing force on every bone, every organ, every blood vessel. Most species would be pinned to the ground instantly. Even standing would be impossible, much less running." "I understand," Jimin said. "You will likely be injured, possibly killed." "I understand," Jimin repeated. Velthar studied her for a long moment. Then he looked up at the observation deck. "Let the record show that the human recruit has requested to begin the gravity gauntlet at maximum pressure. This is against all standard protocols and recommendations." He looked back at Jimin. "However, you have the right to attempt the course as you see fit. Medical team, stand ready for immediate intervention." Jimin stepped up to the entrance of the corridor. The metal floor stretched ahead of her, gleaming under the bright lights. 500 meters. At 50 G, her body would weigh over 3,000 kilograms. Every step would be like carrying a building. Every breath would require forcing her chest to expand against impossible pressure. She could hear the whispers from above. "She's insane. This will kill her." Why would they even allow this? Someone should stop her, but no one did, because technically she was following the rules. And because Jimin suspected, they all wanted to see what would happen when a human pushed herself to absolute destruction. It would prove what they already believed, that humans were weak, that humans didn't belong here. Jimin closed her eyes for just a moment. She thought about the last 2 years, about the training she had done in secret, about the place no one here knew about, Jupiter. The gas giant with its crushing gravity wells. Humanity had established colonies on Jupiter's moons, where the gravity ranged from 2 to 3 times Earth normal. Jimin had spent 2 years there, working in the mining facilities, conditioning her body to operate under constant pressure. Every day her bones had microfractured and healed stronger. Every day her muscles had torn and rebuilt denser. Every day her cardiovascular system had adapted to pushing blood through a body that weighed 3 times what it should. The Academy files said Earth was 1G. That was true. But Jimin hadn't trained on Earth. She opened her eyes and looked at Velthar. "I'm ready." The instructor touched his data pad. "Beginning gravity simulation. Level 50G. Timer will start when the recruit enters the corridor. Proceed when ready." Jimin took a deep breath, then another. She was flooding her blood with oxygen, preparing her body for what came next. Around her, the air seemed to shimmer as the gravity field activated inside the corridor. She could see the distortion where normal space ended and the crushing weight began. She adjusted her stance. Not the upright posture that every other recruit had used. Instead, she leaned forward, shifting her center of gravity, preparing to use every muscle in her body together rather than in sequence. This was a technique she had learned in the Jupiter colonies. When gravity wanted to crush you flat, you didn't fight it. You accepted it and moved with it. 3, Velthar said. Jimin's fingers curled. Her jaw clenched. 2. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. Steady, strong, ready. 1. She exploded forward. The gravity hit her like a physical wall. 3,000 kilograms of force slammed down on her body. Her knees should have buckled. Her spine should have compressed. Her bones should have shattered, but they didn't, because this wasn't new. This wasn't unfamiliar. This was what she had trained for every day for 2 years. This was what her body knew, what it expected, what it had adapted to handle. Jimin's feet hammered against the metal floor in a sprint that looked impossible. Each step drove her forward with explosive force. Her muscles, evolved and enhanced by generations of survival on a death world, fired with efficiency that no other species could match. Her bones, dense and flexible from constant stress, absorbed the impact without breaking. Her heart, oversized for her frame like all human hearts, pumped blood with furious strength. She wasn't fighting the gravity. She was using it. Each step let the weight pull her forward, then pushed against it to launch into the next step. It was a technique that only worked if your body could survive the stress, if your bones could handle compressing and expanding 50 times per second, if your muscles could fire with enough force to move 3,000 kilograms repeatedly. In the observation deck, the recruit stood in absolute silence. The only sound was Jimin's feet striking the metal floor like drum beats. Boom, boom, boom. Impossibly fast, impossibly strong. The corridor blurred past her. She could feel her body beginning to fail. Blood vessels were bursting in her eyes. Her muscles were tearing. Small fractures were spreading through her bones. But she had known this would happen. She had calculated exactly how long her body could sustain this level of stress. 7 seconds. That was her limit. 7 seconds before complete systemic failure. She could see the finish line ahead. Still so far, too far. But she pushed harder, forced her legs to move faster, accepted the pain as her body destroyed itself in pursuit of the impossible. 5 seconds. Her vision was going red. Blood was filling her eyes. 6 seconds. She couldn't breathe. Her chest couldn't expand against the pressure anymore. 7 seconds. Her foot crossed the finish line. Jimin's body gave out instantly. She collapsed forward, no longer able to control her muscles. She hit the ground hard and didn't move. The gravity field shut off immediately, but she barely noticed. Everything was pain. Everything was red. She couldn't see. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. She could hear alarms. Medical teams rushing toward her. Voices shouting. But it all seemed very far away. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Velthar's voice. speaking in a tone she had never heard from him before. Not contempt, not amusement. Something else entirely. 7 seconds. Record the time. 7 seconds. Then nothing. When awareness returned, Jimin couldn't tell how much time had passed. She was lying on something soft. Medical equipment beeped around her. Her whole body felt like one giant bruise. She tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids were heavy and sticky. Don't move. That was Minho's voice, gentle and concerned. You're in the medical bay. You've been unconscious for 14 hours. 14 hours. Jimin processed that slowly. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Someone held a cup of water to her lips, and she managed to swallow a little. Did I finish? She whispered. Her voice sounded like broken glass. You finished, another voice said. Instructor Velthar. He sounded different than before. Less harsh. You finished in 7 seconds. The previous record was 42 seconds. You didn't just break the record. You destroyed it. Jimin tried to smile, but her face hurt too much. Good. The medical team says you have burst blood vessels throughout your body. Multiple fractures in your legs, spine, and ribs. Severe muscle tearing. Internal bleeding. You came very close to dying. Velthar paused. Why? Why would you risk everything for this? Jimin finally managed to force her eyes open. Everything was blurry, but she could make out shapes. Velthar standing beside her bed. Mio nearby, other figures she couldn't identify. Had to prove something, she said. Prove what? That humans belong here. Each word hurt, but she kept going. Everyone said we're too weak. Too fragile. Not good enough. Had to show them. We're not weak. Just different. Velthar was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that Jimin would remember for the rest of her life. I have trained thousands of recruits from hundreds of species. I have seen feats of incredible strength and remarkable skill, but I have never seen anyone willing to destroy their own body to prove a point. That isn't strength. That's something else. Something I don't have a word for. Stubbornness, Jimin whispered. And this time she did smile despite the pain. It's called stubbornness. Above her bed she could hear the medical monitors beeping steadily. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Jimin had been awake for an hour now, staring at the white ceiling and trying to process everything that had happened. Her body still hurt, but the pain was manageable. The medical technology here was far beyond anything on Earth. The doctor said she would need 3 weeks to fully recover, but she would recover. That was what mattered. The door opened and Minho swam in, moving through the air with the easy grace of his species. He carried a small container of what looked like soup. I brought you something from the cafeteria. The medical staff said you can eat now. Thank you. Jimin pushed herself up carefully. Every movement pulled at her healing muscles, but she managed to sit upright. She took the container and sipped the warm liquid inside. It tasted strange, but it was better than the nutrition paste the medical bay had been feeding her. Everyone is talking about you, Minho said. He pulled a chair closer to her bed and sat down. The video of your run has been viewed over 10,000 times already. Recruits from other training stations are watching it. Some of the instructors are calling it impossible. Others are demanding to know how you did it. Jimin set down the soup container. How much trouble am I in? Trouble? Minho looked confused. You broke the academy record by 35 seconds. You proved that humans can compete with any species here. Why would you be in trouble? Because I almost died doing it. Because I used a method that no one else has tried, because... Jimin stopped. She didn't know how to explain the feeling she had. Like she had cheated somehow, even though she hadn't broken any rules. Because you're afraid they'll figure out your secret, a new voice said. Jimin looked up and saw Instructor Velthar standing in the doorway. She hadn't heard him enter. The Vrithian warrior moved into the room, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. We need to talk, recruit, alone. Minho stood up quickly. I'll come back later. He swam out of the room, casting one worried glance back at Jimin before the door closed. Velthar pulled the chair closer and sat down. For a long moment, he just looked at her with his dark insect eyes. Then he placed a datapad on her bed. I requested your full file from Earth. It took some time to arrive, but I finally received it this morning. Do you know what I found? Jimin's stomach tightened. What? A gap. 2 years missing from your record. Between your 7th application to the academy and your 8th acceptance, there are 2 years where you simply vanished. No employment records, no residence registration, nothing. Velthar tapped the datapad, so I searched deeper. I contacted human authorities. I asked questions. And do you know what I discovered? She didn't answer. She already knew what he had found. Jupiter, Velthar said. You spent 2 years working in the mining colonies on Jupiter's moons. Stations where the gravity ranges from 2 to 3G. You conditioned your body to operate under constant increased pressure. He leaned forward. You knew about the gravity gauntlet long before you came here. You trained specifically to beat it. That's why you could withstand 50G. Not because humans are naturally strong, but because you adapted your body through years of extreme conditioning. Jimin met his gaze. Is that against the rules? No, Velthar admitted. Every species trains before coming to the academy. Every recruit prepares in their own way, but most train in normal conditions. What you did was... He paused, searching for the word. Extreme. Dangerous. Most humans who work in Jupiter's colonies for 2 years suffer permanent damage. Joint problems, bone degradation, heart stress. Yet you seem to have suffered none of those effects. How? I don't know, Jimin said honestly. My doctors on Jupiter said my body adapted faster than expected. They called it unusual but not impossible. Velthar made a clicking sound with his mandibles. Unusual, yes, that's one word for it. He stood up and walked to the window of the medical bay. Outside, recruits were moving through the corridors, heading to their training sessions. After your run, I did something I rarely do. I requested classified files from the Galactic Alliance Xenobiology Department. Files about Earth and human evolution. Do you know what Earth is classified as? A Class 12 death world, Jimin said quietly. I found that file before my run. That's why I knew I could do it. Velthar turned to look at her, and his expression was impossible to read. There are only 6 Class 12 death worlds known in the galaxy. Most of them are empty now. The species that evolved on those planets either destroyed themselves or abandoned their worlds as soon as they developed space travel. The conditions are too extreme. The constant danger, the aggressive life forms, the environmental hazards. Life shouldn't even exist on those worlds, much less intelligent life. But it does, Jimin said. Yes, it does. And humans are the only Class 12 species still living on their homeworld. The only ones who stayed. Velthar sat back down. Do you understand what that means? Your species evolved under conditions that would kill most galactic citizens. Your ancestors survived predators that could tear apart a Corthan. They endured diseases that would devastate entire planets. They adapted to weather systems that shift from freezing to boiling in hours. And they did all of this while developing language, culture, technology, and civilization. Jimin didn't know what to say to that. She had never thought of Earth that way. It was just home. Just the planet where humans lived. Yes, there were dangerous animals and bad weather and diseases, but that was normal. Every species had challenges. The files explain many things, Velthar continued. Human muscle fiber has 3 times the burst capacity of most species. Human bones are adaptive and strengthen under stress. Human cardiovascular systems are oversized for your frames. Human immune systems fight off thousands of potential pathogens every day. And most importantly, humans have something the files call persistence hunting instinct. The ability to keep going long past the point where your body should have quit. Is that why I was accepted? Jimin asked. Because I'm from a death world? No. Velthar's answer was firm. You were accepted because you applied 8 times. Because you showed determination that most recruits lack. The Academy Committee didn't know about Earth's classification until after you arrived. That information was restricted, he paused. But now they know. And there are discussions happening at very high levels about what this means. What kind of discussions? Some council members are calling for limits on human recruitment. They say a species from a Class 12 world represents a potential danger. They worry that humans will dominate the military forces, creating imbalance. Velthar's mandibles clicked. Others are saying the opposite. That humanity represents untapped potential. That soldiers from a death world could turn the tide in conflicts where other species fail. What do you think? Jimin asked. Velthar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, I think I was wrong about you. I thought humans were weak, fragile, unsuited for military service. But I confused weakness with unfamiliarity. Your species fights differently because you evolved differently. You don't have the raw strength of a Corthan or the energy abilities of a Thessari. But you have something else. Something that can't be easily measured or quantified. What? Refusal to accept limits. Velthar stood up. You ran that gauntlet knowing it would break your body. You did it anyway because you decided the cost was worth it. That kind of thinking is common among humans but rare among other species. Most galactic citizens know when they're beaten. They accept their limitations and work within them. Humans seem to view limitations as suggestions rather than rules. He walked toward the door, then stopped. 3 weeks of recovery. Then you return to training. But there will be changes. Your run has attracted attention from the highest levels of Alliance command. Expect questions. Expect scrutiny. And expect that many eyes will be watching to see what else humans can do. After he left, Jimin lay back down on the bed. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of rest while everyone talked about her. While the Alliance debated what to do about humans. While she became either a symbol of hope or a target of fear. The door opened again. This time, multiple figures entered. Minho was first, followed by several other recruits. To Jimin's surprise, Hanul was among them. The massive Korthan looked uncomfortable, his crystalline body shifting colors in a way that suggested embarrassment. "We wanted to check on you," Minho said, and Hanul wanted to say something. The Korthan stepped forward. He was so tall that he had to look down at nearly a 90-degree angle to see Jimin in her bed. "I was wrong," he said. The words came out awkwardly, like he wasn't used to apologizing. "I mocked you, called you weak, said you didn't belong here. I was wrong. What you did in the gravity gauntlet was..." He paused. "It was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Or the most insane. Maybe both." "Both," Jimin agreed, and a small smile crossed her face. "I wanted you to know that I respect you now," Hanul said. "And if anyone gives you trouble because you're human, they'll have to deal with me first." After they left, Jimin closed her eyes. Her body still hurt. The medical monitors still beeped their steady rhythm. 3 weeks of recovery stretched ahead of her. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like the weakest recruit in the room. She had proven something important. Not just to the other recruits or the... 6 months had passed since the 7-second run. Jimin stood in the same training room where she had once struggled to complete basic exercises. But everything was different now. She moved through a combat simulation with smooth efficiency, her body responding to threats before her mind fully processed them. The simulation ended with all targets neutralized and 0 hits taken. Her score placed her in the top 15% of all academy recruits. The instructors no longer watched her with contempt. Now they watched with interest, studying how she moved, how she thought, how she approached problems. Other recruits stopped whispering when she entered a room. Some asked her advice. Others simply nodded in respect. The human who had been the weakest recruit was now someone people noticed for different reasons. But the biggest change wasn't in how others saw her. It was in how she saw herself. "Good run," Minho said, swimming over as Jimin exited the simulation pod. "Your reaction time has improved by another 3% since last week." "The targeting patterns are becoming predictable," Jimin said, wiping sweat from her face. "I need to request harder scenarios." "Harder?" Minho's dolphin face showed amusement. "You just completed a scenario designed for advanced recruits. You're still in basic training." "Then maybe I shouldn't be in basic training anymore." A deep, grinding laugh echoed across the training room. Hanul approached, his crystalline body reflecting the overhead lights. The Korthan had changed too over the past months. He and Jimin had become something like friends, though their training methods couldn't have been more different. Where Hanul relied on overwhelming strength, Jimin used speed and precision. Where he absorbed damage, she avoided it entirely, but they had learned to work together, and their combat teams always scored highest in group exercises. "The human wants harder training," Hanul said. "I remember when you could barely finish an endurance run." "I remember when you thought humans were weak," Jimin replied with a slight smile. "I was an idiot." Hanul's crystal face somehow managed to look sheepish. "But I learned." "We all did, that was true." The academy had changed in the 6 months since Jimin's run. Human recruitment had increased by 300%. 20 new human recruits had arrived in the following months, each one eager to prove themselves. Some were strong, some were fast, some were smart, but all of them carried the same stubborn determination that had gotten Jimin through her darkest days. The gravity gauntlet record still stood at 7 seconds. The academy had added a special marker to it, a designation that meant achieved at extreme personal cost. Several humans had attempted to break it. None had come close. Most finished in the 20 to 30-second range, which was still impressive compared to other species. But Jimin's run remained untouchable, a legend that grew with each retelling. "Commander Kinrell wants to see you," a voice said. Jimin turned and saw Bora, the Thessary energy being. The two of them had developed a strange friendship after Bora's failed attempt to cheat the Gauntlet. The energy being had gained respect for Jimin after watching her succeed through pure determination. She said, "It's important. Something about your final examination." Jimin's stomach tightened slightly. The final examination. Every recruit had to pass it to graduate from the academy. It was scheduled for next week, and rumors said it would be the hardest test yet. She found Commander Kinrell in her office, reviewing data on multiple screens. The commander was a species Jimin had never seen before arriving at the academy, something that looked like a collection of floating geometric shapes held together by invisible force. Kinrell could reconfigure her body into any form she wanted, which made her impossible to predict in combat. "Jimin," Kinrell said. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Sit." Jimin sat in the chair across from the commander's desk. "You wanted to see me?" The final examination begins in 5 days. Normally, it's a 72-hour survival simulation on a hostile moon. Squads of 5 must retrieve an objective and extract. Standard procedure. Kinrell's shapes rotated slowly. However, there's been a complication. What kind of complication? The simulation moon is experiencing unusual solar activity. There's a small chance of equipment failure. The Academy Council is debating whether to postpone the examination. Kinrell paused. "I wanted to ask your opinion. As someone who has proven capable of handling unexpected danger, what would you do?" Jimin thought carefully before answering. "Postponing seems safer. But real missions don't get postponed because conditions aren't perfect. If we can't handle unexpected problems in a simulation, how will we handle them in actual combat?" Kinrell's shape shifted into something that might have been a smile. "That's what I told the council. The examination will proceed as scheduled. Your squad assignments have been finalized. You'll lead a team consisting of yourself, Hanul, Minho, Bora, and one of the new human recruits, a young woman named Yuna. I'm leading?" Jimin hadn't expected that. She was still officially a basic recruit. Your tactical scores are in the top 10%. Your leadership evaluations are excellent, and your squad members all requested you specifically. Kinrell's shapes turned serious. "But there's something you should know. The council is watching this examination closely. Human performance will be analyzed at the highest levels. Succeed and it opens doors for your entire species. Fail, and it gives ammunition to those who say humans aren't ready for full alliance membership. No pressure then." Jimin took a deep breath. "Understood." 5 days later, Jimin stood with her squad in the deployment bay. They wore full environmental suits designed to protect them from the harsh conditions of the examination moon. The moon had 3.5 times normal gravity, toxic atmosphere, and temperatures that swung from freezing to boiling. Perfect conditions for testing whether recruits could function under stress. "Remember the plan," Jimin said, reviewing the mission parameters one last time. "We drop at the northern site. Objective is 10 kilometers south. We retrieve it, then move to the extraction point 5 kilometers east. 72 hours to complete. Stay together. Watch each other's backs." "What about the solar activity?" Yuna asked. The new recruit looked nervous. She was younger than Jimin, barely 20 years old, and this was her first major test. "If equipment fails, we adapt," Jimin said simply. "Humans are good at adapting." The squad loaded into the dropship. As they launched toward the moon, Jimin felt a strange calm settle over her. She had trained for this. They all had. Whatever happened down there, they would handle it. The drop went smoothly. The squad landed on the moon's surface and immediately felt the increased gravity. Jimin's time in Jupiter's colonies meant she barely noticed it, but the others moved more carefully. Even Hanul, with his enormous strength, had to adjust his movements. They moved toward the objective, following the route Jimin had planned. The landscape was hostile. Sharp rocks, deep crevasses, and air that would kill them in seconds without their suits. But they made good progress, and after 6 hours they reached the objective site. The objective was a simple data core they needed to retrieve. Jimin secured it in her pack and the squad turned toward the extraction point. That's when everything went wrong. A massive solar flare hit the moon, larger than predicted. Electromagnetic pulses fried half their equipment. Their communication systems died. The extraction ship's beacon disappeared from their displays. Worst of all, their environment suit's power system started failing. "We need to find shelter," Minho said, his voice crackling through the damaged comms. "Our suits won't last 6 days like this." "There." Jimin pointed to a cave system about 2 kilometers away. "If we can reach that, we can wait out the solar storm." But 2 kilometers in failing suits with increased gravity and hostile terrain was almost impossible. The squad started moving, but within an hour it became clear they wouldn't all make it. Yuna's suit was failing fastest. The young human was struggling, her breathing labored. "Leave me," Yuna gasped. "Get to shelter. Come back when the storm passes." "No," Jimin said immediately. "We don't leave people behind." She looked at the others. Hanel was too heavy to carry Yuna and move quickly. Minho's species wasn't built for this kind of work. Bora could phase through matter but couldn't carry physical objects while doing so. That left Jimin. "I'll carry her," Jimin said. "She weighs 70 kilos, Hanul protested. "In this gravity, that's 250 kilos. Plus your own weight. You can't carry that for 2 kilometers. "Watch me," Jimin said. She helped Yuna onto her back, adjusting the weight distribution carefully. 250 kilos, plus her own body weight increased by the gravity, plus her equipment. She was carrying more than 400 kilos total. Her legs shook. Her back screamed. But she started walking 1 step, then another, then another. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "Humans don't win by being stronger. We win by being too stubborn to quit." The squad moved together. Hanel cleared the path. Mingo navigated. Bora scouted ahead, and Jimin carried Yuna, step by agonizing step toward the shelter. She didn't count the steps, didn't track the distance, just focused on the next footfall, the next meter, the next breath. 2 kilometers had never felt so long. But finally, after 3 hours that felt like 3 days, they reached the cave. Jimin set Yuna down carefully,